Is Russia preparing a new offensive in northeast Ukraine? But why? And how is Ukraine planning to stop it? I'm a U.S. Army combat veteran. It's May 5th, 2025. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, taking a look at the control map. There's been no updates in the last 24 hours, so we're going to go over to the combat map. We can see Russia launching multiple attacks in the Kharkiv region, at least 2 civilians killed, 4 wounded. A 2-story building damaged and set ablaze. So this is obviously a pretty serious set of attacks. You can see here, this is the city of Kharkiv. It's very, very rare that we see this much violence in or around Kharkiv. Obviously, this is where Russia launched their invasion in February 2022. They did something similar where they just launched a massive barrage of missiles and rockets and artillery into the city. And so this is not necessarily indicative of a new offensive, but it could be that Russia is probing to see if Ukraine's defenses are stretched thin in this region. Of course, we know that there are major Ukrainian and Russian forces amassed along the eastern border, but this could also be part of a larger plan to distract Ukrainian forces from other areas. So we also have Russian forces launching strikes in Odessa, 3 people wounded. This is the Black Sea port city of Odessa. And again, you can see it's not just military targets, right? These are civilian infrastructure targets that Russia is striking, the intent obviously being to put pressure on Ukraine to end the war or to force them to the negotiating table. Obviously, Russia has said that they don't want to destroy Ukraine, but they do seem to want to destroy a lot of Ukraine's civilian infrastructure. Then we also see, more strikes in Kiev. So this is actually news. It's not reflected yet on this map, but Russian forces heavily bombarded Kiev overnight. It was the most significant attack on the capital in months, if not years. At least 10 people were injured due to this bombardment. So this is a pretty significant attack. It's hard to say exactly why Russia did this. It could be that they simply wanted to strike Kiev because they haven't struck Kiev in a long time, but I think there is probably more to it than that. Again, it could be part of a larger plan to distract Ukrainian forces. But I think it's also possible that Russia may be trying to send a message to Ukraine that despite ongoing offensives in the east and the south, that Russia still considers Kiev a legitimate military target and that Ukrainians living in Kiev are not safe. Okay, then we're going to go over to the news. There's a couple interesting items here. So first, there's reporting that Russia has built up a significant force of 50,000 personnel in the Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk regions, and that this force includes a recently redeployed battalion of the 76th Airborne VDV Division, so this is an elite Russian unit that's now been moved from the Far East all the way to the border with Ukraine. And obviously this leads to speculation that Russia is preparing a new offensive, potentially towards northeastern Ukraine and Kharkiv city. But as I mentioned before, this could also just be part of a larger plan to distract Ukrainian forces. Maybe Russia knows that Ukraine is anticipating an offensive in the east or in the south, and by moving these forces to the north, they're forcing Ukraine to keep a significant number of troops in reserve in case there is an attack in the north. Then also in the news, Ukraine says that it has destroyed a Russian defense electronics plant in Bryansk that produces components for the K-52 attack helicopter. Now this is interesting because we know that Russia has struggled to produce sufficient numbers of these attack helicopters to meet the demands of the war. And so if Ukraine can disrupt Russia's ability to produce these critical components, then it could have a real impact on Russia's ability to project air power into Ukrainian airspace. Then finally, in the news, it looks like Ukraine is going to receive 3 million artillery shells from its allies in 2025. So the Czech Republic announced that it will provide 1.8 million of these shells, and that these will be delivered gradually throughout the year. When combined with other international efforts, this will bring the total number of artillery shells provided to Ukraine in 2025 to 3 million. So this is really good news. Obviously, artillery has been a weak point for Ukraine for much of the war. And so the fact that Ukraine is going to have access to this much artillery in 2025 is really a game changer. Anyway, guys, that's all I had for you. Thank you so much. Hit like and hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.